I didn't think recording that meeting would put me at risk, at least not that much risk. I thought I knew what I was getting into. Just another employee in Section 14B, the kind of department no one ever asks about. That's what gave me safety, anonymity. The meeting started with 3 people. At first, nothing unusual. Budget, funding cuts, contract redistribution. But by the end, names started being mentioned. Names of journalists, activists, even teachers. That's when I realized this wasn't a technical meeting. It was a deliberate decision about who would be silenced in the coming months. They spoke about narrative recalibration and noise deceleration. But I knew exactly what those words meant. I just couldn't prove it. At least not until now. I had accidentally left the recorder running. Or maybe that's what I tell myself. The truth is, I had been suspicious for a while. Something felt off. And that morning, something told me to slip the recorder into my suit pocket. I took the audio home and listened to it again that night. My heart was beating so hard I couldn't tell it apart from the voices on the tape. It was all there. Details of smear campaigns, illegal fund transfers, instructions to destroy specific reputations. It was like discovering I worked inside a machine built to fabricate lies and bury the truth under layers of official paperwork. For 3 days, I couldn't sleep. Not out of fear, but because I didn't know what to do. I tried sending the audio to 2 journalists. One replied, saying he couldn't get involved. The other had his account deleted the same day. On the 4th day, I got a call. No caller ID. I answered, and all I heard was, "You need to leave now." The call ended. 10 minutes later, the streetlights went out. My entire building went silent. No internet, no signal. Just absolute darkness and the distant hum of something powering. DOWN, I froze. For the first time, I felt something bigger than me staring straight at me. I felt the presence like someone was already inside my apartment before even breaking in. But there was no knock, no sound. Just the stretched out silence of something about to happen. I ran to the bathroom, shut the door, and took a deep breath. I grabbed the flash drive with the audio and stuffed it inside the toothbrush box. There wasn't much time. If they were going to take me, I had to make sure that audio survived. And that's exactly when I heard the doorknob turn. That night changed everything. After seeing that shadow standing in the hallway, I just froze. My eyes locked on that darkness. I could swear I felt something beyond fear, as if a presence was analyzing me, measuring my thoughts. When I stepped forward, the streetlight cut through the blinds and revealed nothing. The hallway was empty. But it wasn't just empty, it was like it had been erased. As if that moment of doubt had been planted there on purpose. I went back to the desk and plugged in the flash drive. The content was encrypted, but something about it pulled me in. I spent hours trying to crack the initial layer of protection. Around 3 in the morning, I managed to open the first video fragment. And when I watched it, my life stopped being mine. On the screen, a man. He looked exhausted, sunken eyes, scruffy beard, pale skin. He was in a room similar to mine, staring straight into the camera. If you're seeing this, it means they've marked you too. The recording was only 49 seconds long. The man explained he was part of an ideological containment project. According to him, people who started thinking outside the standard patterns were monitored in real time by an invisible neural system. The mind was scanned for dissenting patterns, and when those patterns accumulated, something was done. He didn't say what. The message ended with a warning. Stop thinking differently. They feel it when you feel. Its screen went black. I took a deep breath, trying to figure out whether this was some kind of fiction, a sick prank, or something too real to accept immediately. But there was a second file, and then a third. Texts, videos, neural network maps, medical records. I started piecing together a puzzle far bigger than I'd imagined. A silent, decentralized organization that monitored millions of citizens, not for what they did, but for what they thought. People weren't arrested for crimes, but for thinking about committing them, for desiring freedom, for feeling that something was wrong with the world. It was emotional anticipation that triggered the alerts, not the acts themselves. I spent the following week living like a ghost. At work, I pretended everything was fine. At home, I only spoke and thought, afraid even my voice could be recorded. I started digging through old academic papers that were never officially published. The pattern was always the same. Every researcher who questioned the nature of free will or studied neurolinguistic fields applied to mass populations vanished. They disappeared from the internet, from academia, from life. Then everything changed. The day I found my mother's name in the records of an old patent for subliminal brain stimulation. She used to work in the private sector, said she was a software engineer, but vanished when I was 13. My father said it was an accident. But there it was, her name tied to a project called Echoes of Consciousness. My hands were shaking. All of this was deeply connected to me. And maybe I was just another piece in a board that had been laid out before I was even born. I decided to follow the last lead in the video, a forgotten address on the outskirts of the city, in an abandoned building where a group of dissidents supposedly gathered to reconstruct the truth. I didn't know if it was real or a trap. But if my mother had been part of it, and if it could explain the hollow silence that grew in our home after she vanished, then I had to go all the way. That night, I left without a phone, without ID, wearing simple clothes. I crossed the city, like a fugitive, dodging cameras, avoiding the subway. When I reached the street, I nearly turned back. The building was half demolished, surrounded by rust and graffiti. But one light was on, dimly, on the third floor. I climbed the dark stairs, guided by an ancestral impulse, as if something inside me already knew the way. At the top of the staircase, a steel door with the word "Listen" painted in red. I knocked twice, waited. No answer. When I touched the doorknob, the door opened by itself. I stepped inside. At that moment, I stepped into the room, and the silence seemed to crush everything around me. The air was thick, charged with an electricity I couldn't explain. The walls were bare, with deep cracks and stains that told stories of neglect. In the center, an old table cluttered with papers, electronic equipment, and a single chair that seemed to beckon for a secret. I sat down, unsure of what to expect, when the door behind me slammed shut with a dry thud. My heart raced, but not out of fear. It was as if something inside me was awakening. The part of me that had longed for answers for so long. Suddenly, a calm but firm voice echoed from the dark corner of the room. "You've come farther than we expected." The light flickered, and from the shadows emerged a man of middle age, his face marked by time and eyes bearing the weight of forbidden truths. He handed me a yellow envelope, without a word. I opened it with trembling hands and found inside a series of confidential documents, mind maps, reports of missing people, and images showing faces like mine, people who, like me, had begun to question reality. The man explained that this clandestine organization was known only as the Observatory. They monitored, cataloged, and, when necessary, interfered with the consciousness of those who tried to uncover the truth behind the imposed order. "What you've discovered is not just a conspiracy theory," he said. "It's a silent war against the human mind." I asked what the ultimate goal of all this was, and he replied with a sad smile, "Absolute control, a humanity manipulated without free will, programmed to obey without question." For hours, I heard stories of resistance, people who tried to escape the system, who fought against mental programming and disappeared without a trace. But I also heard about hope. Small groups scattered around the world trying to keep the flame of freedom of thought alive. When the conversation ended, I felt a mixture of fear and determination. I was no longer the same. The quest for answers had transformed me. And above all, I realized that the true battle was not against an external enemy, but within every mind, including mine. I left that place burdened with responsibility and certain that my life would never return to what it was. The road ahead would be lonely, dangerous, but necessary. Because, in the end, mental freedom is worth any sacrifice. Asterisk. The weight of that night still rested on my shoulders as I walked through the quiet city streets. Each step seemed to echo louder than it should, as if the asphalt itself whispered secrets only I could hear. That yellow envelope, now safely tucked in my backpack, carried a mystery beyond anything I had ever faced. The unspoken words within it bore an invisible weight, a call pulling me deeper into a game far bigger than I had ever imagined. For days, I tried to understand the contents without letting go of caution. Paranoia began to seep into every thought. Who else knew? Who was watching? Why me? These questions spun in my mind like a silent hurricane, shattering the calm I still tried to hold on to. The air felt heavier, the city lights dimmer, as if the world had taken away its shine to hide something important. One of those days, I received an unexpected call. A calm and firm female voice directed me to meet someone who could help unravel the secret I now carried with me. She didn't reveal her name, only a meeting point, a small cafe almost hidden on a side street few knew. I hesitated, fear and curiosity warring fiercely inside me. But the need for answers was greater. Arriving at the place, the atmosphere felt thick with tension. The cafe had an old air, with wooden furniture creaking under the weight of years, and a fogged window letting in the faint light of dusk. Inside, a figure waited. She wasn't someone I could easily describe. Her eyes hid stories, and her expression was a mix of caution and challenge. Without many words, she placed a folder in front of me. It contained documents, photos, and a detailed map showing places I never imagined existed. As I explored that content, I realized I was at the center of a conspiracy much larger than what unfolded in my own life. Names of influential people, abandoned places, hidden transactions. It was as if someone had built a parallel universe of manipulations, where control lay in the hands of those hiding in the shadows. And I, a simple unknown, had been thrown into this board game. Unsure if I was a piece or the player. The clock on the wall marked the passing hours, but time seemed to have stopped for me. I needed to understand, to connect every dot, even if it meant risking everything I had. The feeling of being watched, that at any moment something or someone could appear to stop me, was constant. The line between reality and imagination began to dissolve, leaving only one certainty. There was no turning back. Leaving that cafe, twilight had fully set in, and the city lights began to pulse like tiny beacons amid the darkness. With every step, the mission became clearer, but also more dangerous. I wasn't just uncovering secrets, I was transforming, becoming part of a story that needed to be told, even if it cost me everything. The silence of the night seemed to carry an unbearable weight, as if the very air was thick with untold secrets. Every step I took along the narrow path around the lake echoed endlessly, breaking the calm that should have reigned there. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, a chill climbing up my spine, leaving me restless. I knew something was wrong, that the truth I sought was closer than I ever imagined, yet shrouded in shadows and unknown dangers. As I moved forward, my thoughts tangled with memories and doubts, an inner whirlwind that made every decision heavier. What had happened in that ancient temple? Why did that monk, with his almost supernatural serenity, seemed to carry an invisible burden. And what was that mechanical being? Seemingly so far from humanity, seeking in such a place laden with history and mysticism. The answer came unexpectedly, not in words, but in gestures and exchanged glances. That meeting transcended logic and reason. It became a delicate dance between past and future, faith and doubt, man and machine. I felt I was on the threshold. A forbidden knowledge. A secret that could shake the foundations of what we understand as existence. But with that revelation came a price. The sense of urgency intensified. Time seemed to slip through my fingers as invisible forces moved around me. I was not just uncovering a hidden truth, but placing myself in the center of a silent conflict, where every step could mean redemption or destruction. My heart raced, and the lights flickered on the calm waters of the lake, reflecting an image I could not yet fully understand. It was as if the universe itself conspired to show me that the journey was far from over, that the next chapter would be even more challenging and revealing. And in that moment, a firm certainty settled within me. Humanity still holds deep mysteries. And what I discovered that night would forever change the course of my life. The following days felt like walking through a shattered mirror, each step cutting me with fragments of the reality I thought I knew. The truth I uncovered in that underground archive wasn't just shocking, it was destabilizing. It wasn't just about me or my father. It was about a much larger machine, constructed over decades by invisible hands, designed to keep us all blind. The symbol etched on the folder, the same one that had appeared in my father's drawings and in the dreams I never understood, was the seal of a covert operation called Project Aurora. It was linked to selective disappearances, manipulation of records, and control of public narratives through devices embedded in national infrastructure. A social re-engineering program initiated in the 90s, supposedly in response to a threat of cultural deconstruction. As I read the reports, something began to align in my mind, as if memories that weren't mine were being forcefully implanted. Project Aurora used neural mapping technology to erase and rebuild identities. I wasn't the only one. There were thousands. Children born into the program, taken from families deemed unfit, reprogrammed to follow a social template. My fragmented, disjointed childhood finally made sense. But what completely shattered me was finding a dossier with my father's name. It wasn't a delusion. He really existed. Worse, he had been one of the project's first engineers before rebelling and trying to expose it. He vanished soon after leaving behind a set of hidden evidence now in my hands. He had tried with everything he had to preserve who I was, and for that he paid with oblivion. I returned home with the dossier clutched to my chest. I wasn't the same anymore. In my dimly lit living room, as night began to fall, I connected the documents to an encrypted network I discovered in the files. It was an emergency channel created by other former agents who had also awakened from the illusion. I sent everything. Every page, every image, every piece of proof. I waited. 4 minutes, hours, until the first reply arrived. You are not alone. In the following days, I received encrypted messages. They came from different parts of the country, even from abroad. Men and women who had also uncovered pieces of the puzzle, but didn't know how to assemble them. Now we did. And that changed everything. But it also made us targets. The shadows began to move faster. Cameras near my home started to fail mysteriously. My phone would stop working in specific parts of the city. Drones appeared more frequently above my building. They knew. At dawn on Thursday, I received a warning. Just 3 words. Leave now. They found you. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a small hard drive with the original data, hid it inside my shoe, and ran. I ran as if my life depended on it, because it did. As I left the city, I saw a black car turning the corner of my street. Its headlights were off. I found shelter with one of the network contacts. An old man who claimed to have worked in government intelligence before becoming a deserter. He looked into my eyes and said something. "I'll never forget. You had the courage to remember. Most die trying to forget." That's when I understood what had awakened in me. It wasn't just about justice. It was about memory, about resisting erasure, about leaving traces they couldn't burn. And if I could tell this story, maybe I could reignite something in others too. That night, under the roof of a crumbling cabin, I wrote everything. In detail, not for me, but for whoever came next. Because truth is like a seed. Even buried in concrete, it finds a way to grow. And mine was beginning to sprout.